Hi everyone, and welcome to the basics of GeoTracker for Blender. In this video, we'll guide you through the installation process, show you the tracking basics, and talk about the tools you can find in GeoTracker to manipulate your scene. And also give you a very basic example of how tracking data can be used for adding CG elements to your scene in Blender. A quick note before we start. This add-on was designed specially for Blender, which is a 3D creation suite, and so it's a perfect marriage of object tracking and the 3D world with all its 3D elements and effects within one platform. Another important thing is, this add-on contains both GeoTracker and Face Builder. If you already own Face Builder for Blender, we strongly recommend using the updater. Otherwise, you'll need to delete your current version of the add-on, relaunch Blender, and then download and install the newest version. You can install the add-on either online or offline, but in any case, you'll need to go to our website and download the installation package first. And if you want to do it offline, download the core library too. You might need that option in case you work on a computer that has no internet access. Once the download is complete, go to Add-ons in Blender Preferences, press Install, select the zip file you've just downloaded and hit Install Add-on. You will see this checkbox that you need to tick in order to activate the add-on and also accept the license agreement. Then press Install Online if your computer is connected to the internet, or Install from disk if it's not, and in that case you'll need to load the core library zip file here as well. Wait till the installation is complete. Close this window and press N to see the side panel where GeoTracker permanently lives inside Blender. Now, when we want to track an object in our video, we click on GeoTracker tab and then press this Create New GeoTracker button, which opens this nice little menu with many useful settings we're going to talk about right now. The one we need to look at first is Inputs. Over here we have Clip, and that's our footage in which we will track our objects. This can be an image sequence or movie file. So we're going to hit this folder icon and load this sequence that you can find in the project folder following the download link in the description to this video. And in that sequence we see a GMC pickup truck going towards us along this sort of snowy and icy road. That's the one we'll be tracking today using geometry, which is right here below the clip. Basically, a geometry is a 3D model of a similar shape to the target object that we want to track. Right now we have a cube in here, which is the cube from the Blender startup scene, and so GeoTracker just picks it from there. We're going to delete this cube because we won't be using it anyway. Instead, we'll load a custom 3D model of a truck the standard Blender way. So go to File, Import, choose the OBJ format and load it. Then you can either click on the empty field here in Geometry and select it from the list, or use the object picker to select it right in the viewport. Next is Camera, which we use as our viewpoint. Again, this is the same camera from our Blender scene, so as you see, GeoTracker operates the objects that you have here in your Blender scene. And we'll actually delete this light so that it doesn't distract us. Before we move on to tracking, we need to do one important thing, and that is hit this Analyze button and then press OK. Now, when we use this option, GeoTracker actually does what it says. It analyzes the clip and saves it as a pre-calc file containing the analysis data to your disk, which will make tracking a lot faster than without it. By default, this file is going to be saved to your temporary folder on Mac or Disk C on Windows. But of course, you can choose a different location for it. Once the analysis is complete, you'll notice that the Tracking tab is unfolded, and the first thing we need to choose here is what we will actually track. The one selected right now and always as you open GeoTracker is Geometry, and that's because GeoTracker is most often used for tracking objects by means of geometry. So let's go over here and press the Pin Mode button. What will happen is we'll see our clip on the screen, or its first frame to be exact, and this green wireframe on top of it, which is our geometry. What we need to do first is set up the initial position of our 3D model. The one we've prepared for today is not the full truck, as you see there's only the front and no trunk, but that will suffice for tracking this shot. Still, the model has to be as precise as possible. If the wireframe color is too bright or dim, you can always go to Appearance tab and customize its look, adjust opacity, or even choose a different color for it. Okay, so let's put our model where it should be. Simply drag the wireframe to overlay it on top of the target object. If we left-click anywhere on the wireframe, this will create a pin, which is this tiny little dot that's gonna turn red when it's deselected. And these pins can help us accurately place our geometry. We can create as many pins as we need. Their amount is not gonna affect our tracking. And if you want to remove a pin, just right-click on it. To get a better idea of what's going on, let's add more workspace and split our window into two in order to see what's happening in the 3D scene. And we see that all this wireframe manipulation results in the actual change of our model position in 3D space. Now, you may notice that hard as we try, our geometry is still a bit off. The problem may not be in the 3D model itself, but the wrong camera settings being used. The thing is, we need to use the same focal length value as the camera on the set had. You can unfold the camera tab and change that value right here in GeoTracker if you know it. But if you don't, you can use automatic focal length estimation by ticking this checkbox, and this will calculate the focal length value for you. Note that this works only for the current frame while you're pinning your model, and you need to have at least 4 pins set on your wireframe to make it work. And by the way, we shouldn't worry about the weird kind of placement that our model has right now in the 3D world. We'll deal with it very soon. Now that we've finished pinning, you can press this button, which is track forward, and just wait till the tracking is complete. As we get closer to the end of our clip, our wireframe slips away a little. We can fix this by adjusting its position manually in this final frame. Our tracking data is stored in these green keyframes over here, created by GeoTracker, and this new adjusted position of our geometry is going to be saved in a new keyframe whose color is going to be yellow on top of the green dotted line, indicating that it's a manual keyframe. Now, we've fixed our tracking data in the final frame, but the keyframes just before it still contain the old data. We can see our wireframe performing a slight jump if we move the playhead between these frames. What we should do here is update the tracking data between the keyframes, so let's place the playhead somewhere in between and press Refine. You can set as many manual keyframes as you need for achieving a good tracking result. Note that when you hit Refine or Tracking buttons, this doesn't modify the manual keyframes, but only changes the tracking data between those frames. Let's play it again. As you see, the movement of our 3D model is now smooth and accurate, which means we have some good tracking results here, and our geometry is now perfectly synced with the truck's motion in the video. If we look at our scene in 3D space, we'll notice that our truck is sort of taking off from under the grid floor rather than driving on it. This is because we were tracking geometry relevant to camera, while the camera itself remains static, and we were not tied to any specific point in 3D space. So let's bring the track on the surface and make it a nice looking scene. We can easily do that by telling GeoTracker to move the whole scene using geometry as origin point. So let's go to the Scene tab, and here in Transform, press the Position button, and then in this popover we hit Geometry and select World Origin as a preset position. This moves the whole scene so that the truck is in the world origin, but apparently trucks don't drive with their front facing up, so let's put it back on the wheels, and to do that we'll rotate the scene 90 degrees around the X and press OK to apply changes. If we press play now, we'll see that our truck is moving parallel to the grid floor, and if we go to camera view, this will look like a normal 3D scene. Now let's give a little example of how we can actually utilize it. We're gonna add a CG element to this video and say this will be a police light bar on the roof of our truck. Let's go down here in the Scene tab and export our animated geometry as an empty. We're gonna select geometry here, and we'll use this linked option so that all further changes of our tracking data and the animation copied onto empty will be synced. So as we hit export, we get an empty that is animated exactly the same way as our 3D model, and we can turn its visibility on and off. Now let's get a police light bar in here, and we'll import it a slightly different way this time. We'll hit Append in the File menu and select the scene in which our light bar was created. Then inside that scene we open the Object folder and select all the objects that relate to the light bar, so like the parts that it's made of. All parts of this light bar make a group, and they're all parented to the light bar empty layer. So we're gonna put it on the roof and also drag this light bar empty onto GT empty, holding Shift to parent them, and so now when we press play, they'll move together like one whole thing. If we take a closer look at the roof though, we'll notice an overlay. We're not supposed to see the basement of these light bar mounts, as they should be blocked from our view by the roof in this shot. So what we can do is go to the Shading tab and first select Material Preview. Then press Shift A to create a new material, which is going to be holdout. Now let's connect holdout to material output. And we can delete this node because we're not going to use it. And as we do so, we can see that this makes our truck model transparent, and at the same time it masks out the basement of the light bar mounts. Good. But another thing we need to do now is go here to Render Properties, scroll down to the Film tab and make the world background transparent, because otherwise we'd see a weird silhouette around the truck. You might notice that our light bar already contains some materials. If you can't see them, you should probably switch to Material Preview up here. These are the materials we prepared in advance. Let's take a quick look at them. This one is for the blue light and this one is for red, and also materials for glass and metal parts. That was actually why we used the append option to import the light bar model, because we wanted to load it along with the materials that it has inside. Alright, now we're going to load the environment texture so that we have some nice reflections on the light bar surface to make it look more natural. The reason we won't be using the HDR Blender has for us here in the render viewport shading is that it has a lot of greens, which we don't have in our shot. So let's switch this shader type to world, then press Shift A, start typing environment texture and wire it to the background node. Then load this Mod Road HDR from the project folder. Now we need to do a bit of compositing, because if we go ahead and set this frame to render now, this will render our 3D scene without any movie sequence in it. So let's go to Compositing Workspace. We need first to tick this Use Nodes checkbox, then create a movie clip node, click on Open and load our footage in here. Now let's create Alpha Over and place it in between the movie clip node and composite node. Then wire this rendered layers node to Alpha Over and also create a viewer node and connect Alpha Over to that one too. And by doing that, we've simply merged our light bar with the background video in our render. This is what it's going to look like now if we render it. And now let's finally add a glow. The simplest way to do it is create a glare node and put it in between render layers and alpha, because we want to add this glow effect only to the light bar. Let's select Fog Glow here in the drop-down list and then duplicate it and insert it in between. These will be two different glow effects, so let's select Streaks in here and we're gonna go down here and adjust some of these values to make it look nice. Let's go ahead and render this frame now, and that looks good. We can now render the whole sequence to see it in motion. The rendering is finished and it looks very nice. These were the basics of GeoTracker for Blender and a little example of how you can simply and quickly add CG elements with some cool 3D effects to your video. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about our new tutorials and streams. GeoTracker for Blender is available for download right now on KeenTools.io.